Well, good morning. Welcome. So grateful to be here with you guys. My name is Nate. I'm one of our student pastors here at Faith Baptist Church. Actually, I should say my name is Nathaniel because I got reprimanded last time I came up here and said my name was Nate. Like 3 people in the world call me Nathaniel, and so everyone calls me Nate. And so to that person who reprimanded me, you're welcome. You've made an impact on my life, and I will no longer introduce myself the same way. But if you've been with us the past couple weeks, we've been working through the book of James together as a church family. And if this is your first time with us or you haven't been with us in a while, well, welcome to the family. Welcome back to the family. We're grateful that you're here. But last week, Pastor Will did a phenomenal job covering chapter 2. And some of you may be here like, who was that guy last week? I had a person sitting next to me. They hadn't been here for a while. And he leaned over and he goes, who is that guy? I'm like, oh, that's Pastor Will. He's our creative arts pastor. And then he goes, well, what's that? I'm like, I don't know, actually. He just makes a lot of stuff look really cool and sound really awesome. But no, we are super grateful for Will and his family. He's been a huge impact on our team already, and we're grateful for his voice. And so I would encourage you to go back to last week's message if you haven't listened to it and watch it, whatever your preferred method is, because it was really, really good. But today we're going to be working through James chapter 3. But before we get there, a couple months ago we had some plumbing issues that took place in our boys' bathroom. And so we have 4 boys under the age of 8. And so you can imagine what possibly went on in this bathroom. My wife has a sign in there that says, this is a boys' bathroom. I have no control over what happens in here. And so for any parents in the room, you know exactly where this story is heading, but our toilet was not functioning correctly or the way it was designed to. And so you'd press the handle, right, for stuff to go down, and it would slowly come back up. And you see that as a parent, and you're like, dang it, this is going to cost me some money and some frustrations and some gray hairs. And so we did what all great parents do, right? We sat all of our boys down, and we took on good cop, bad cop roles. I was the good cop. My wife was the bad cop, obviously. And of course, no one is confessing, right? They're like, we didn't do anything. We don't know what happened. I didn't do it. There's blame being shifted around. No one is confessing or owning up. But clearly somebody did something to this toilet because it was working one day and now it's not. And so after hours of interrogation and maybe some slight threatening, one of them finally confessed and came forward and said, hey, I flushed a toothbrush down the toilet. And this is not the toothbrush, just so we're clear. Some of you guys are like, what kind of church is this? This is brand new, just opened out of the package this morning, all right? But anyways, it just so happened that week that Josh and I were meeting with a volunteer who was interested in coming up into the porch. And in our conversation with him, it came up that he used to do plumbing work. And I was like, oh man, this is a divine appointment. And so I was like, hey, one of my kids flushed a toothbrush down the toilet. Do you have any idea on how we can get that out? And he's like, oh yeah, you should just get a toilet auger and that should get it out, no problem. I'm like, great. What the heck is a toilet auger? Like, I don't know what that is. And so I did what any self-respecting millennial would do. I didn't ask this person for help or anyone for help for that matter. I Googled what a toilet auger was, and then I started Googling videos on how to use one. And I went down to our teacher building supply. Thankfully, they had one, and of course, God bless hardware people, but at the front, he's like, plumbing issues? Like, no, this is just my casual every day Saturday, I come in here and buy a toilet auger. And so, anyways, I did that. And after many attempts and rewinds of videos, I fought the good fight and got the toothbrush out of the toilet. And thank you. Yeah. My wife's response was the exact same. I came out with toothbrush and auger in hand. And she goes, I've never been more attracted to you in my life. And so, but I share this story with you guys for a few reasons. The first one is to show just how a small toothbrush, when not used properly, can create some really big problems, potentially cause destruction, and then a lot of unnecessary drama. And the second one is the power of a how-to video or book in our modern age is a great thing, right? We've used them all for multiple things. I've used them And at first, as we read through the letter of James, it seems to be this very practical, step-by-step, how to live a good Christian life manual. And it is those things. But I think as we're going to read today, you're going to see that it's more than that. And there's more to it than just your checklist of what to do and what not to do. You can't just checklist your way, life hack your way to a good Christian life and think you're good to go. And in the words of the great theologian Ted Lasso, if you're comfortable, you're doing it wrong. And so if you have your Bibles or Bible apps, whatever you want to use, we're going to be in James chapter 3, starting in verse 1, and we're going to go ahead and jump in. This is James talking. He's writing this letter, and he says, "My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment, for we all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able to also bridle the whole body. Indeed, we put bits in horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn their whole body. Look also at ships, although they are also large and are driven by fierce winds, they are turned by a very small rudder, whatever the pilot desires. Even so, the tongue is a little member and boasts great things. See how great a force a little fire kindles. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body, and sets on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea is tamed, and has been tamed by mankind. But no man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who are made in the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring send forth fresh water, and bitter from the same opening? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Thus no spring yields both salt water and fresh." So from the get-go, James tells us, teachers, beware. And for me, I was reminded of a story from 2018 or 2019, I couldn't quite remember, but I was sitting in a large lecture hall in Orange County, California, listening to Dr. J.P. Moreland share with my class a story of the time that he found himself at a celebrity's birthday party in L.A. And if you don't know who J.P. Moreland is, he's a very influential Christian apologist, but also like the Christian Mr. Feeney. He has all the wisdom, but even more so like with his looks and the way he talks. And I think I have a picture of them, yes. And if you're here for I don't know who Mr. Feeney is, well, find your closest millennial or parent of a millennial, and they can explain to you who Mr. Feeney is. We learned a lot of life lessons from him. And so, but anyways, he found himself at this celebrity's birthday party, and he refused to tell our class who the celebrity was because we all asked. But at this party, the celebrity, for whatever reason, has a dolphin at their house. And so he begins engaging in conversation with another guest at this party about which form of life has more value, the dolphin or a human. And the guest tells him that he thinks the dolphin is of more value than a human life. And Dr. Moreland then paints for him a hypothetical scenario, as all apologists like to do. And he asks him, well, if this house caught on fire and you had to choose to save the dolphin or my granddaughter, which would you choose? And the guest answers him, the dolphin. So Dr. Moreland's response has stuck with me all these years, and he said, so you're telling me that you value the life of that dolphin more than the life of my granddaughter? Sir, if I wasn't a Christian man, I would punch you right in the mouth. So clearly, Dr. Moreland left an impression on me that day in our whole class with his words, but even more so with his defense of human life and the value of it. Because that's what teachers do. I think of Coach Ty Hodling, who taught me how to care for people, unless they were from Lovington. My goodness, that man does not like Lovington. A specific 9th grade locker room talk is in my mind. But I'm reminded of how he came to visit me in the hospital after I had broken my collarbone at a football game, and the conversations that we would also have about Christianity and philosophy. I'm reminded of the humility I learned from Dr. Matos at Dallas Baptist, one of the smartest men that I've ever had the opportunity to learn from, and hearing him tell our whole class that the more he knows, the more he realizes he doesn't know. And I think of all the things that I've been taught about the world, about life, about Jesus, that I've had to unlearn throughout the years and take and examine with who Jesus is and what he taught and discern for myself that those things are not true or what Jesus was about. See, the influence of a teacher on the life of a person goes far beyond content. And while James is specifically addressing teachers and leaders in the church, I think of those who had some of the greatest impacts on my life. They were teachers. And it's because of this impact that teachers have on our lives that James warns that teachers will be judged with a greater strictness. Because with a phrase, a comment, or a word, someone with great influence can send someone down a path intentionally or unintentionally. And too much damage has been done from the pulpit of churches, and it is a responsibility that should not be taken lightly. And so James is clearly discussing the importance of those leading in the church and their words and being judged with a greater strictness. And so maybe you're sitting here and you're like, well, I'm not a teacher. I'm not a pastor or a leader in a church, so what does this have to do with me? Why should I care? Well, James then expands his scope of what he is talking about to not just teachers, but to every person who claims to follow Jesus. He says that how they use their words matters. Because, Christian, what you say matters. Because words matter. See, words reveal what's in our heart, and words shape our world. From the very beginning, we see in Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And so evening and the morning were the first day. So from the very beginning, we see just how powerful words can be. Our Creator speaks everything into existence, and he calls it good. And while we don't have the power to create anything from nothing with our words, we do have the ability to bring light or darkness into this world. We can speak goodness into the lives of those around us, or we can contribute to the evil that exists around every single corner. See, it is no wonder that James stresses the importance of taming the tongue. He tells us that even though it is the smallest member of the body, it is incredibly powerful. And with it we bring light or darkness, life or death. And just like the bit in a horse's mouth or the rudder of a ship, the tongue controls the whole person. And just like the small spark in a forest or a toddler toothbrush in a toilet, the tongue can bring great destruction. But here's the problem. James tells us that no man can tame it. In James 3, verses 8 through 10, he says, "No man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who've been made in the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so." And so in this context, cursing is a verbal attack. It's hatred. It's a violence of heart towards people who bear the image of God. Matt Chandler, pastor of the Village Church in Dallas, puts it this way. He says it's a deification of ourselves and a dehumanization of someone else, elevating ourselves to a judge by damning another person. See, it's not just a crude word or a rude joke. It includes those things, but it's not just those things. It's more than that. He's telling us this is a hard issue. See, something is wrong. Something is off inside of us if we are able to look at another human made in the image of God, regardless of who they are and what they stand for. If you can look at them, whoever they are, and you can only offer them a cursing in your words or in your thoughts, something is off. And James goes so far as to say that this type of speech, it's actually inspired by hell itself. And James and Jesus tell us this should not be so. In Matthew 12, verses 33 through 37, Jesus says this. He says, either make the tree good and its fruit good, or else make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For a tree is known by its fruit. Brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil things. But I say to you that for every idle word men may speak, they will give an account of it on the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. This is why the Christian author and theologian Eugene Peterson says we should always read our Bibles with Pepto-Bismol nearby. See, Jesus and James both taught that we should take the hatred in our heart seriously. And I believe James' message for us this morning is timely. Because there are a lot of us in this room that are angry, that are hurt, and if we're honest, we're hateful due to all the events that have transpired in our country. And we have two options. We can join in with the current rhetoric that we see all over the place, or we can choose the way of Jesus. We can choose to bring light into the darkness. We can choose to speak life into the death into our world. See, Proverbs 18:21 tells us that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So what are your words saying about you this morning? N.T. Wright's commentary on this passage says, what James is after then is consistency. He wants people following Jesus through and through to be blessing only people rather than blessing and cursing people. And if we're honest, this is a high standard, right? That's a high bar to get to, blessing only people. Because this world is terrible, and there are some terrible things that we want to call out and be upset about, and we should. But at the same time, we should expect nothing less if the gospel is in fact true and the true message of salvation, that is the standard. Because without Jesus and left to our own devices, the tongue will only bring destruction on yourself and those around you. And this is why James says that no man can tame it, because we need help. We need help that comes from above. And by God's grace, that's exactly what the good news of Jesus offers us. So James leaves us in this tension of our words matter more than we realize, but yet no one can tame the tongue, and we need help. So what are we to do? This is where James pivots from words to wisdom. Because the greatest impact on our words will be where we draw wisdom from. And so in James chapter 3, verses 13 through 18, he tells us, who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exists, confusion and every evil thing are there. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. See, James now presents us with two choices. We can choose to have earthly wisdom or wisdom from above. And he shows us these two types of wisdom. And the first is earthly wisdom, which is characterized as selfish ambition and jealousy. See, this wisdom grasps for everything and resents all who have more. Those who find themselves here in this choice find themselves living in a world where God does not exist. And if God does not exist, then anything is on the table to attain whatever their hearts desire. And they will do whatever it takes to get what their hearts desire, whether it's power, status, or success. This James calls earthly, sensual, and demonic. This type of wisdom leads to battles between people, as James will discuss in chapter 4, because battles rage within broken humans. And as long as they are attempting to attain what they desire but failing doing so, that battle will continue to rage on and bring more division. The second type of wisdom he calls wisdom from above. And this wisdom is characterized as pure, peaceable, merciful, gentle, willing to yield, or compliant in other translations, full of good fruit, and without hypocrisy and partiality. This is the wisdom that comes from above because it is who God is. See, James isn't giving us a step-by-step life hack. He's giving us a new way of life, a better way forward, as people who claim to follow Jesus, as people who claim to have the truth. Because it's the way of Jesus. See, Jesus came and he lived the perfect life. He was pure. Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, not a war horse. He was peaceful. Jesus showed mercy to all, even those deemed unworthy and enemies of Israel. And Jesus was gentle in his interactions. Unless you're keeping people from God, then he flipped some tables. See, Jesus was willing to give up his life and did so for you and for me. And so as we think on this, let's recall back to James chapter 1, where he tells us that if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith. See, if anyone knew what true wisdom looked like, it had to have been James. He lived with it. James tells us that we have a choice every day to choose the way of the world or to choose the way of Jesus. And so maybe some of you are here thinking, peaceful, gentle, compliant, mercy. Man, the way of Jesus sounds weak. And Nate, I think you're a little naive, but that's not the way the world works. I'd like to say maybe that's the point. Maybe be reminded that the persecution of Christians is likely already occurring as James writes this letter. Maybe be reminded that the way of Jesus is upside down compared to the way the world is. And to end this chapter, James reminds us that the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace, which is a reference back to the teaching of Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, verse 9, where he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." And the challenge for God's people is to tell the truth about the way the world is and the way people are without turning into people who consistently gripe and have a negative or cutting word to say about everyone and everything. Dallas Willard says, one of the hardest things in the world is to be right and to not hurt people with it. Because we can choose to look out into this world and be overwhelmed with the chaos. We can choose to be angry. We can choose to have hatred in our hearts. We can choose retaliation. Those are for sure choices that we can all choose to make. Or we can look out into the chaos and we can look for the beauty. We can look for the generosity, for the love and the goodness that is there. And we can celebrate those things, but even more so, we can choose to participate in them. As the saying goes, it is better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. So what is the answer? In the middle of these warnings, well, James tells us it's wisdom from above. That's the answer. That's what we need. And he's already told us at the beginning of his letter that God will give this kind of wisdom to anyone who asks in faith. And so as Bosch comes out to lead us in a song, as we end our time together this morning, what I would like us to do is to ask. I would like us to ask in faith. Ask God to give us wisdom from above, so that we can bring light into darkness. We can bring peace into the chaos. And so I'm going to ask everyone to go ahead and stand up. Because here's the deal. I know I'm not alone in this. Because I don't know about you, but man, I could sure use some peace in my life right about now. I don't know about you, but I'm sure I'm not the only one that has some hate in my heart. I don't know about you, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who has said some things or thought some things that, man, that was just not a good reflection of who Jesus is. See, we're all in need of help. And so maybe you're like me, and you need to repent. It's a fancy Christian word for asking God to forgive you and to change you, because you can't do it on your own. And so as the music starts to play, right here is where I'll be asking God for help, asking God to change my heart, asking God to help me bring light into the darkness. And so this morning the altar is open. We'll have some people up here who will be willing to pray with you if you need it. And so as the music plays, you come as you need to. And I pray you'll join me.